welcome back to another class, everyone. We are here once again to talk about efficiency. We just recently did a video about 5 hidden efficiencies that you might not know about in game, and one of the really cool things about the comment section is people started to bring a lot of the nuances around some of them, or even other ones, about what you can do to kind of finesse the overall shipment situation. And while those were great, it did get me thinking, there are some things from shipments that we should really just never buy. And that is the theme of today's video. What are 5 things in the shipments that we really should never be purchasing, regardless of how desperate we become or how much we really need the resource? So as per usual, we have our little guide up here in the corner, and we're just going to be working our way down the list. Now, the first one I believe is very important because not only is it a terrible deal, but it's also for one of the resources that you need the most, or at least that most players need the most, and that is Kyrotech for MK2 currency. Now, while I am definitely not against getting Kyrotech from shipments, in fact, there are multiple places in shipments where you should be getting them from. When we go to the weekly shipments, we see in here for 2,000 Mark II currency, you can get 5 Kyrotech. This is an atrocious deal on a number of levels. Not only is it not a lot of Kyrotech, but the amount of currency you're paying is going to end up costing you a lot in other precious resources, specifically the furnaces using the Mark II currency under Guild tab. You can see that for only 335 currency, we can get the exact same amount. So 6 times better. And you might just say, well, Calvin, Kyrotech is just really expensive. Regardless of the fact that it's the same amount, that's just how much it costs. And that's just not really true. When we go to another currency that you should be spending on Kyrotech, like the Get 2 currency, you can see that we can actually get 3 times the amount for not even half of the price of the currency. And then when you go and compare it to other Gear 12 pieces, like the furnace that we just looked at, the deal is significantly not as good as the Mark II one was. So overall, there's a lot of great places that buy Kyrotech, whether it be Get 2, even Get 3, Grand Arena currency. You can even go through and farm the nodes, specifically with the Kyrotech Shock Prod, and get some other goodies that way. But overall, you really should never be buying it with Mark II currency, unless you're just about to lock a Galactic Legend and GAC sign up is right around the corner. But even then, you might be better off in the long run doing something else. Now, the next thing I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on because we just talked about this in our last video, and that is when you're maxed out on your characters for a certain type of shipment, like Cantina here, and you start just buying characters using the Shard Shop currency, that's fine, but there's more value in buying the ships than there is in the characters. Again, we kind of showed you the math on that last time, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that here. Just know, if you're in that spot with the currency where you're just buying things specifically for Shard Shop currency, it should be ships rather than characters. Now, the next thing is going to actually be about how we spend our Shard Shop currency. When we go into the Shard Shop currency part of the shipments, you're going to see that it's going to be full of Gear 12 pieces. Some of these Gear 12 pieces are going to be used for the left side, like our med packs here, which are a great deal. And some of them are going to be used for the right side, kind of like our thermal detonators or the HoloLens thingamabobs. You'll notice, though, that the right side pieces, so these gold ones up here, are 720 of that currency, or in other words, double what the med packs or the med pack like materials are going to cost. So it's going to cost you double, and this becomes even worse when we go ahead and go back to our Mark II currency here, and you're going to see that the position is actually reversed for these two, the left and right side pieces. Not only are the med packs more expensive here, but you're still getting the same amount. So pretty much, if we were to do things in an ideal way, in the Shard Shop currency, we're consistently buying the left side pieces that cost 360 as needed. Obviously, don't buy things you don't need. Looking at you, stupid globe. But in reverse, when we go over to the Mark II currency, making sure that we are prioritizing the cheaper pieces like the furnace that we need. But I will say, I won't actually die on the hill that you shouldn't be buying med packs from here, just because Shard Shop currency, for most players, not all, but for most players, it's not gonna be enough to be able to get med packs just because they don't appear in there 6 times a day, and likely your characters need a ton of them. So do not feel bad if you have to buy these here. The reverse is not true, though. Do not be buying furnaces or HoloLenses or anything from the Shard Shop currency that costs 720. The rest of it you are pretty much fine with. Now, next up is going to be Omegas in fleet currency. Now, there isn't one currently here, so this is kind of a bad example, but occasionally we will have an Omega pop up in this top corner, and it's going to be expensive, and there is a real temptation to buy it because you're in a position, or some people are in a position, where they might have 100+ Zeta mats, but they don't have any Omegas. So they're like, oh, these really aren't getting me anywhere. It's not the best thing to do in the long run. And luckily, the way the game is currently structured, there is a much more efficient way to get Omegas. It is going to be slower, but it is going to be more efficient, which is how most of the game works, awkwardly enough. And that is to go into the weekly shipments and always, always, always buy the Omegas with the Mark 1 currency to be able to get that resource. Obviously, there are other ways to get the Omegas, but this is going to help accelerate it and will take time, but it is much better than depriving yourself of Zetas in the long run. Again, this crunch is going to look pretty weird for some people, but once you start getting a lot of the characters that need 3 or 4 or even 6 Zetas, the bottleneck is going to start to swap from Omegas to Zetas. I realize it does start out that way. I myself, my account was at that point, and I had to resist the temptation to buy Omegas at a very inflated price to the detriment of my Zetas, and overall, that's not a good deal. So that is going to be number 4 for us. And the final thing is going to be buying micro attenuators for Legends tokens. And now this is a rather new one. We have talked about this a little bit when the store was first implemented here, but there's going to be a temptation to buy micro attenuators with the Legend currency because it kind of just looks like an okay deal. And the reality is most players don't have 8 Galactic Legends. And even if you do, there's not a lot of currency here. You can only spend it on very select few things. And it's just an atrociously bad deal when you start to compare the numbers. Since micro attenuators can't typically be bought from crystals in the store, we don't have a direct comparison. However, that being said, we do have relative get 3 value of one of the shops that we just saw. And when you compare it to other things that can be bought for get 3, it is terrible to buy it with Legend tokens. When we see here you cost 50 for the Legend price, it actually only costs 25 to buy it with get 3. So not only is that half, but when you start comparing the other currencies, wow, they just do so much better buying other things. You're much better off buying Omicrons, which are incredibly more expensive with get 3, or even Proving Ground shards, which are quite a bit more expensive, but even Chirotech. Like, I probably wouldn't vouch for buying Chirotech day in and day out with Legend tokens, but it's still a significantly better deal. And realistically, if we're wanting to go a whole analysis on what the Legend tokens are doing for you, it's very obvious. Omicrons and PG shards, purely not even from a value perspective, but that too, but just because those are so much more rare. And even if you don't have the rarity piece going for you because you don't want those 2 items for whatever reason, the signal data ends up being a significantly better deal. So I get modding. I love modding myself. I do it all the time. I have an atrocious amount of micro attenuators from other sources, primarily the GET3 over here, but at the same time, this is just not the way to get it. So that really is going to make up are 5 specific things that you should never be buying from Shipments, regardless of how good you may think it looks. When we run up the numbers across the board with these 5 things, it never really pans out. So as always, let us know in the comments what you think, and if there are anything else that you should just really stay away from a value perspective. But until the next time, thank you for watching, and stay awesome.